Let's dive into how to push. There is a video on this that I would love for you to watch that goes into a lot of depth, and you're visually going to see me showing tension, how to relax the jaw, what it looks like. So there's a lot more description in that. So make sure you watch it. Also note that we have a PDF that goes alongside this, and that all the information we have to give you is meant to go together. So that mental, spiritual prep, the visuals of what it looks like, different positions you can be in labor and for pushing, and also the stages of labor, listening to that so you can really understand how to utilize the breath during each stage, which is what we're going to talk about here and what there is a more expanded upon video to watch. So this is just audio here talking to you that there's so much pushing advice out there, but the main one that you're going to find is that you're going to inhale, hold your breath, bear down like you're having a bowel movement, and push, push, push with all your might. And that is a great way to create injury to your pelvic floor. And it's not the best advice because that is assuming that you can push baby out with just your abs and your pelvic floor. And it is your uterus that pushes the baby out. I've already mentioned this before, but the uterus is contracting to thin and soften and dilate that cervix. But then the way the muscle bunches up towards the top, it gets thicker at the top to then push out the baby. And there's the fetal ejection reflex, which is what I've also described in other audios of your body when it needs to vomit. Sometimes you will feel like a little sick and they'll go near the toilet, but a lot of people are aware of that type of vomiting that might happen from food poisoning. And hopefully this doesn't happen during your pregnancy at all, but we all have experiences at some point in time where your body just goes like, and you just like throw up, right? And sorry for the visual with this. And then the other visual is a bowel movement, is everyone's had a bowel movement where they might have to sit on the toilet for a while. Hopefully you're not straining, but there's also the bowel movements where you're like, ooh, I gotta go. And you go to the bathroom and you just go. It's not like you're waiting there for 10 minutes. Your body just goes. Your colon is essentially just being like, eject. And same thing with vomiting, eject. And the same thing can happen with a more beautiful process, which is having your baby. So the uterus can do that. It has the fetal ejection reflex. We just have to allow ourselves the space to reach that point in our labor, which a lot of times we just tell women, you've hit 10 centimeters, it's go time. Just push, 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 as opposed to saying you're 10 centimeters. When you feel like your body's giving you the urge to push, that's when we're going to work on pushing. But that's not usually what people say. So I'm saying it to you. You shouldn't be straining to push a bowel movement out either. That's not good for your pelvic floor. That is going to be leading you to more pelvic floor complications and more likely to having things like hemorrhoids because that's too much pressure. You should be having bowel movements that are easy to come out. And so same thing with pushing for a baby. We shouldn't be just bearing down. We should be learning how to train our pelvic floor to relax so we can get out of the way, because it's not the pelvic floor that pushes the baby out. It's the uterus. And Kegels are something that we need to ditch during pregnancy and in general, because they're not advantageous for us. It's kind of old school news to do Kegels. So be part of the new school stuff and stop doing Kegels. Especially during pregnancy, we want to be relaxing pelvic floor because it's the relaxing and opening and getting it out of the way that can allow the birth process to be a little bit easier. So big things to remember that I really want you to keep in mind is that increased tension not only increases the pelvic floor tension, and again, we want it to be able to open to like let baby out, but also increased tension increases pain sensations. The more you can get your body to relax, the more you get progression in labor and the more you have less intense sensations during those contractions. It's true. You can ask people who have done both tensed up versus relaxed, and it feels different. So you want to remind yourself to keep your hands relaxed. A lot of times people will grip things. They'll grip hospital beds. You might find that your butt wants to contract, or your groin, or your shoulders, or your jaw. So those are all areas to have your partner remind you to relax. And a lot of times they don't need to say it. It can just touch that area gently to kind of remind you. Now, the more relaxed your jaw and throat are, the more relaxed your cervix and butt are. And when I mean butt, I really do mean like your anus, because that's connected to your pelvic floor. That's part of your pelvic floor. So you want to have that area relaxed. So you might have to consistently tell yourself, relax these areas, because it's common to want to kind of hold your jaw and like grip onto your butt. we kind of want to like crawl out and escape the discomforts. And we want to actually not think about escaping them, but working through them and sinking in and surrendering. Now, I also want you to think about low tones create relaxation. Even right now, if you go, you like pull your body up. If you go, oh, your body lowers down. So play around with that, going, oh, and feel what happens. And so then when you think about labor and the noises that you could be making, going like, is not helpful. That's going to scrunch up your face and your jaw, and your throat's going to get kind of like tightened and locked up, and that's going to tighten your pelvic floor and your butt. And that's not going to be that surrendering, softening, and opening that you really do need for labor. And I will say this, because I have not mentioned it yet in any part of the programming, is that so many people think that if you can like run a marathon or do a hard CrossFit workout, like you've got birth. And like you probably do. However, that is not what is the determining factor for being able to get through birth in a way that is easier for you. The best way to get through birth is surrender. And that is not really what you do when you are going through a CrossFit workout or a marathon. It's more like, I can do this, like stick with it, got it. And while there might be mantras and things you tell yourself in those big, intense workouts, those workouts are more of our masculine energy, and birth requires our feminine energy, which is not the workout style. And I am somebody who comes from a background of intense athletics. And I will tell you, having gone through the journey 4 times, birth is a lot more about your feminine energy, which is not working out. That's more of like your masculine energy, your testosterone part side of you. It is the feminine letting go, surrendering, softening, and opening. It is. You'll see that. Another thing that you can do is having some visualizations for your pelvic floor of like a flower blooming and opening. That could help you. So as we dive into these breaths, I want you to think about, this is something to practice, especially towards the second half of your pregnancy, definitely in 3rd trimester. Practice what these breaths can look like for you. Use them. Try them a couple times a day so that you can be ready for them. Practice them with your partner, at least have your partner be aware of it. The biggest thing throughout labor, and especially pushing, is to not hold your breath. Purple pushing is something that is what is taught, and you know better now. You are not going to do this because it puts extra pressure on your skin, your nerves, your organs, ligaments, and muscles, and is going to lead you to more injuries like hernias and prolapse and diastasis. You don't need that. It can burst capillaries in your face and in your eyes, and it depletes oxygen and depletes energy, which makes you more exhausted. Like you want that oxygen continuing to pump. So you're going to inhale and exhale. So you keep getting that flow of oxygen into your body. You don't need to just stop breathing and holding your breath. It's too much pressure and it's not helpful. So you're going to practice that and remind yourself this, and have your partner know that they need to remind you of this as well. And this is true also during labor, not just the pushing process. We don't want to hold our breath because that's going to increase tension and then increase the discomforts. We want to always make sure that we're either inhaling or exhaling and releasing. We're keeping that flow. In early labor, we talk about this in the video that I have, that the contractions are just that regular diaphragmatic breath. So it's a nice deep inhale and deep exhale. Big diaphragmatic breath. And then in the relaxation, so in between contractions, is more of that restorative breath. You might find that you do the deep breathing and then you have a few kind of deep breaths and then you get back into your regular breathing. Now, active labor is going to be different. This is going to be where you're going to be starting to have more intensities. So you're going to focus on your breath even more. This is going to be really valuable to your birth team to be aware of what your cues are. And what your cues likely are that you're about to enter contraction is going to be a nice deep inhale. And then they're going to see you go into the pattern of your exhale of being he, hoo. And you're going to hold that hoo. Or it might look like a rough 4 seconds in, 8 seconds exhale. So it could look like this. Inhale, that deep inhale lets them know you're entering a contraction. I'm going to give an example of the he, hoo. An example of the 4 seconds and 8 seconds out is going to look like or sound like this. You'll notice that low tone on the exhale, but that I keep telling myself I need to inhale and then exhale. Once you are out of that contraction, so you're no longer needing these breath patterns, and you can choose both of them. That's why I encourage you to practice both. You'll find yourself at the end of that having that relaxation breath. And that's going to allow your birth team to know that you're likely out of that contraction. You're likely to have some good deep breaths after that. In that relaxation zone, you're going to have some of those deeper breaths, catching back up with your body, working on that increase of blood flow, working on that relaxation, tapping back into your parasympathetics, that rest and digest before the next contraction comes in. So I'm going to do this one more time. You're going to inhale. Or so you can see how I did a few. There would be more than 2 of those deep inhale cycles before you hit the relaxation, but that's roughly what it would be looking like. If you notice that you start getting caught and you're trying to exhale, but you just kind of hold on to it, so you're or you're inhale, exhale, and you're like stuck on it, that's when we have to switch up the breath because you're likely entering transition. And so now it's going to look like either you are blowing out candles, so you're going, and the reason why you're doing that as opposed to just a is because you're likely going to, with these intensities, hold and create tension. And this is when we really want you to not hold. You can also do a he, hoo, hoo, as opposed to the candle blowing out. So here are the 2 options. You inhale. Or blowing out the candles. And these are likely being done because you might be starting to have more intensities or an urge to push, but you're not quite at 10 centimeters. And after you've gone through that contraction, your breath will start going back into that diaphragmatic breath of and then you're going to notice a contraction coming. So you're going to take a deep inhale. Or the blowing of the candles. And then, last but not least, you will hit the stage of pushing. And hopefully you'll know you're here because your body has that intense urge, not solely because a provider has told you that they're 10 centimeters. Some providers just know you're there and they will not check. And in some situations, they will check and tell you you're 10 centimeters. Either way, I encourage you to wait for that urge. And a reminder that this is not like the movies. If you were doing this like the movies, you are likely going to push with all your might as you're holding your breath. And we don't want to do that. So during a contraction, we don't want to and just strain and push on our pelvic floor. That's too much. So we want to do a deep tone. So you can do a moo or a and what that's doing is it is putting that energy into your pelvic floor. You can feel that. So I want you to do like a moo or an ooh. Ooh, moo. And then I want you to try a strain. And it feels very different on the pelvic floor. So the deep, low moo or ooh you're going to feel in your pelvic floor, but it's not going to feel straining. So it's going to pull that energy downward, and you're going to feel your lower transverse contract, creating some pressure in that core to help with the process of getting baby out. We want to visualize energy to the pelvis, not too much pressure on the pelvic floor, and no breath holding. In the in-between of pushing, you're going to go back into that deep diaphragmatic breath. If baby's head is out, you might find that you're able to keep in that diaphragmatic breath, which would be great. Ideally, you are not continuing to push, or you might find you need to go back to the candle blowing out. So if baby's head is out, you might find that it's hard for you to go into the diaphragmatic breath, and you might do a just a blowing out of the candles. And then last but not least, you will hit that third stage eventually once baby is out, which is pushing out the placenta, delivering the placenta. And you might find that you need to go back to your breath to manage this. And it's not often the same breath as pushing, though you can utilize that for sure. A lot of times it is going back to that transitional breath. But the fact you have all these breaths in your tool belt, your body is going to tell you what feels best. So sometimes it's women that are wanting to do the transitional breath, and sometimes women will continue that pushing breath that they did, and they'll inhale and go, oh, as they're helping push out that placenta. But again, sometimes there is that transitional breath that people like to use as well. All right. Those are the breath patterns. Again, there is a video for this that really, discusses more of that tension and relaxing your jaw and closing your eyes and things like that. So make sure you watch that one as well. And some of this is repeated, but honestly, that is very valuable because the more you hear it, the more you practice it, the more you're going to be aware of it and ready for it when it's go time.